In an age of blockbuster membership cards, mall food courts, and MTV actually playing music videos, there was also a brief and fascinating period where Pauly Shore was one of the hottest stars in Hollywood. His surfer-slacker alter ego was everywhere in the early 90s, and studios were eager to turn that popularity into movie gold. One of the most memorable results was 1993's Son-in-Law. Today, we're continuing our three-part retrospective on the career of the Weasel himself, Pauly Shore. Last week, we took a dive into the film that put Shore on the map, 1992's Encino Man. Be sure to check that out. I'll leave a link in the description below. But for now, we are jumping straight into what may have been Shore's most lovable role in Son-in-Law. The movie stars Pauly Shore as Crawl, a free-spirited college resident advisor whose entire personality seems to be powered by caffeine, slang, and positive vibes. Alongside him is Carla Gugino as Becca Warner, a farm girl from South Dakota who heads off to college in Los Angeles and discovers that life can be a lot bigger than the world she grew up in. Gugino would later go on to have a remarkably versatile career, appearing in films like Spy Kids, Watchmen, Sin City, and Gerald's Game, while also earning acclaim on television in projects like The Haunting of Hill House. Becca's father, Walter Warner, is played by Lane Smith, an actor many viewers will recognize from My Cousin Vinny, where he played the unforgettable prosecuting attorney. Television fans also know him as Perry White from Lois and Clark: The New Adventures of Superman. The cast also includes Cindy Pickett, remembered by many as Katie Bueller in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, along with Patrick Renna, who would become instantly recognizable that same year thanks to The Sandlot. The story is simple, but that's part of the charm. Becca leaves her family's South Dakota farm to attend college in California. At first, she's overwhelmed by the culture shock, but she soon befriends Crawl, who encourages her to embrace new experiences. By Thanksgiving, Becca has transformed from a small-town farm girl into someone much more confident and independent. When she invites Crawl home for the holiday, her family is shocked by the changes they've seen in her. Things become even more complicated when Crawl pretends to be her fiancé, setting off a chain of misunderstandings, culture clashes, and comedic disasters. At its heart, Son-in-Law is a classic fish-out-of-water comedy. The twist is that the fish isn't just out of water once. Becca is out of her element in California, and then Crawl is completely out of his element on a South Dakota farm. The movie gets a lot of mileage out of watching those worlds collide. To understand why this movie existed in the first place, you really have to understand where Pauly Shore was in 1993. During the late 1980s and early 90s, Shore had built a sizable following through MTV. His Weasel persona became popular enough that Hollywood started building entire movies around it. Encino Man had been a commercial success in 1992, and studios were eager to see if Shore could carry another comedy as the main attraction. Son-in-Law was directed by Steve Rash and released by Hollywood Pictures, which was one of Disney's labels aimed at somewhat older audiences. It arrived in theaters July 2nd, 1993, right in the middle of the summer movie season. The film was produced on an estimated budget of around $8 million and ended up earning more than $36 million domestically, making it a profitable hit. For a modestly budgeted comedy, those numbers were quite respectable and helped reinforce the idea that Pauly Shore was a legitimate box office draw at the time. Critics, however, were not exactly lining up to declare it a masterpiece. Reviews were mixed to negative. Many critics felt Shore's style was either something you loved or something you wanted to escape from immediately. There didn't seem to be much middle ground, but audiences were generally more forgiving, especially young viewers who had already embraced Shore's offbeat persona. What's interesting is that Son-in-Law has followed a path shared by many 1990s comedies. Critical opinion was lukewarm at the time, but nostalgia has been kind to it. Over the years, the movie has developed a cult following. For many people who grew up during that era, watching Crawl stumble through farm life became part of their regular cable television rotation. It became one of those movies that you discover halfway through while channel surfing and then somehow end up watching until the credits rolled. One reason the film has endured better than some people expected is that beneath the broad comedy, it's actually a surprisingly sincere story. The central conflict isn't really about whether Crawl can fit into farm life, it's about change. Becca is discovering that becoming an adult often means growing beyond the expectations of the people around you. There's a theme that resonates far beyond the specific setting of the movie. Almost everyone has experienced some version of this. You leave home, start a new job, go away to college, move to a different city, and simply develop new interests. Then you come back home and discover that the people you knew before aren't entirely sure what to make of the new version of you. The movie turns that universal experience into comedy by making the contrast as extreme as possible. Becca returns from California looking and acting completely different. Her family sees change as a threat, while she sees it as growth. Crawl becomes the walking symbol of everything that makes them uncomfortable. What's remarkable is that Crawl could have easily become an obnoxious caricature. On paper, he probably should have been. He's loud, weird, overdressed, and completely incapable of speaking like a normal human being. Yet Pauly Shore gives the character a surprising amount of warmth. Crawl genuinely likes people. He's not trying to mock the Warner family. He's trying to connect with them. He wants to help on the farm. He wants everyone to get along. He may be bizarre, but he's sincere. That sincerity is what keeps the movie from collapsing under its own gimmick. In fact, one of the more interesting aspects of the film is that the supposed outsider often behaves better than the locals. Crawl is consistently open-minded. The Warner family, at least initially, tends to judge him based on appearance. The movie gently flips audience expectations. The eccentric Californian turns out to be one of the most decent people in the story. Another factor that helps the film is Carla Gugino's performance. It's easy to forget how young she was at the time because she projects so much confidence on screen. Becca could have become little more than a plot device caught between two worlds, but Gugino gives her enough depth that her journey feels believable. The supporting cast also does solid work. Lane Smith brings credibility to the role of Walter Warner. He's not portrayed as a villain, he's a father struggling to understand a daughter who seems to be changing faster than he can process. Cindy Pickett gives the mother a warmth that helps balance some of the family tension. And Patrick Renna steals several scenes as Becca's younger brother, who quickly realizes that Crawl might actually be one of the coolest people he's ever met. Watching the film today also offers a fascinating time capsule of early 90s culture. The fashion alone deserves its own documentary. There are enough bright colors and aggressively 90s hairstyles to keep a nostalgia channel busy for weeks. The movie also captures a very specific moment in American culture when rural and urban lifestyles were often portrayed as completely separate worlds. The comedy comes from exaggerating those differences, but the film ultimately argues that people have more in common than they realize. One thing that stands out today is how relatively gentle the movie feels compared to many later comedies. The humor is broad, but it's not especially mean-spirited. Even when characters clash, the film generally wants reconciliation rather than humiliation. That's part of what makes it easy to revisit decades later. It's also worth noting that Son-in-Law arrived during a period when Hollywood was producing a steady stream of culture clash comedies. Audiences loved watching characters get dropped into unfamiliar environments. Whether it was city people in the country or country people in the city or just about anybody accidentally joining the military, the formula was everywhere. What distinguishes Son-in-Law is that its emotional core is stronger than many of its contemporaries. Of course, not every joke has aged perfectly. That's true of most comedies from any era. Some references are very much products of 1993. But surprisingly, a lot of the film's humor still works because it's rooted in character rather than topical references. Perhaps the movie's biggest achievement is that it transformed what could have been a one-note comedy into a story about acceptance. By the end, the characters learn that identity isn't a choice between two extremes. Becca doesn't have to reject her hometown to embrace new experiences. Crawl doesn't have to become a farmer to earn respect. Everyone meets somewhere in the middle. Looking back now, Son-in-Law feels like a snapshot of a very particular Hollywood moment. It's a Pauly Shore vehicle, certainly, but it's also more heartfelt than its reputation suggests. It captures the anxieties of growing up, leaving home and figuring out who you want to be, all while delivering jokes about farm animals and a guy named Crawl who talks like he's from another planet. It may never appear on many lists of greatest comedies ever made, but that's almost beside the point. Movies like Son-in-Law survive because people enjoy spending time with them. They're comfort food movies. They're films people remember watching on cable after school or during summer vacation. They're reminders of a very specific era and a specific feeling. And honestly, that's not a bad legacy at all. 30 plus years later, Crawl is still out there, popping trunks, confusing farmers, and proving that sometimes the weirdest person in the room is also the nicest. For a modest comedy from 1993, that's a pretty impressive accomplishment. Next week, we'll conclude our look back at Shore's career with another fish out of water tale. Prepare to save the planet through science, and join us next week, where we can all dance if we want to. So if Son-in-Law were remade today, who would you want to see cast as Crawl? Let me know what you think in the comments, and if you feel like dropping a like or subscribe, that's much appreciated.